Hi, this is Kira Davis, host of Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. And our podcast is growing so quickly that we've got a great problem. We need a new theme song. So we're asking our listeners and our fans to create a theme song for the show and send it to us. It needs to be at least 30 seconds, but it can be a full-length song because here is the really cool thing. Not only will you have the possibility to win $150, but you also can have the opportunity to have your song released on FCB Records in conjunction with The Orchard at Sony Music. That's right. You'll get a release thanks to Sony Music. Does it get any better than that? If you've got an entry, send it to me right here at JLTY at protonmail.com, JLTY at protonmail.com.
This is the FCB Radio Network, home of the best personalities and where real talk lives. Online at fcbradio.com. FCB.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. I am your host, Kira Davis, and this is the podcast where we take hot topics, hot button issues, and we take your talking points on those things and we draw them out all the way to their logical conclusion. Because sometimes if you really stop and listen to the things you're saying, you're not actually saying what you think you are. So this is an exercise in, of course, critical thinking and what? Persuasion. And I'm coming to you today from Southern California on my son's 19th birthday. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to my amazing, beautiful, handsome, intelligent son, Scotty. You have been a huge blessing to my life. One of the greatest days of my life was the day that I became your mother, and you made me a mother. And becoming a mother has made me a better person. So happy birthday to my love. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so blessed that I have been able to walk this far with you in your life, and I hope I get to stand back and watch you walk even further for a long time to come. Been contemplating time lately, you guys, obviously, as I watch my son basically turn into a young man. I was telling him last night, I feel like now you're a young man. Like even 18, it's like, okay, 18, you were still in high school. And you got to understand, for me, it's emotional because he was a pandemic graduate. So he didn't get his senior high school year. That was destroyed, along with a lot of experiences that we had unfortunately already paid for. And he didn't have his freshman year in college, and he's supposed to be in college in Chicago, and that didn't work out. And he's been through a lot this year. And so to be able to have, I was angry that he wasn't leaving, but to be able to have watched him grow over this last year, I really thank God for giving me that blessing and opportunity, because now I've seen that he is a really responsible and intelligent young man, and he can take care of himself. He's been taking care of himself this whole year. I mean, he works a couple jobs, and he makes his own money. He pays almost all his own bills. He lives here, but his cars and his cars. I make it sound like he's driving his car, the one car that is my car. But, he pays for all the maintenance and, of course, his own gas. I mean, I'm not paying for you to run around. And he, does his own taxes, and he has his own small business, believe it or not. And it's in the online community, just like a lot of kids, and he's very successful at it. I mean, he's just like, I've been able to see that he'll be okay without me. And I think if I had let him go last year as planned, I would have spent the whole year really, really with my stomach in knots, worrying, what's he doing now? Does he need my help? Is he making the right decisions? And not that worry ever totally goes away, but I at least have the comfort of watching him turn into a young man this year, as opposed to sending him off to college and then getting a young man back. And I'll always be grateful for that. As angry as I am about this pandemic and the way it's been handled, I'll always be grateful for that. I don't know, I've been feeling very sentimental for obvious reasons. But I guess I'll just use this opportunity to say, parents, there's a lot of, looking back on 19 years with my son, there's a lot of stuff that I regret. I have a lot of regrets. I think most parents do. I feel guilty about some of my decisions or some of my behaviors, some of the bad habits I've passed on, some of the bad habits I've let him see in me and how that might shape him in the future. I mean, I just have all kinds of guilt and worry and regret when it comes to all of the things I could have done better as a parent. And in that respect, I recognize I'm no different than most people. But the one thing I always wanted to make sure of was that I raised kids who would be okay without me. And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of parents to say and to embrace. Because these days especially, I think there are too many parents out there who, if you search your heart, you really don't want your kids to be okay without you. You like being needed so much that you would like to keep them needing you for a long time. And that's not good. That's not healthy parenting, but it's not healthy for your child. It does mean that you've got to let your kids be uncomfortable. And that starts young. Parents always, we do ourselves a disservice when we say, oh, well, when they get older, I'll explain this to them. Or when they get older, I'll start. No. You start the behaviors when they're younger because it doesn't get better. Then when they get older, they'll just be telling you why you shouldn't, why you can't make them do X, Y, Z. You got to start young. And so that even means making them do the uncomfortable things at 2, at 3, at 4. It's not the same as, hey, you take your car yourself to the oil change place, get the oil change, replace the wiper blades, and go get your car cleaned up and detailed. That's your responsibility as an adult, son. That's it. That and him saying yes doesn't start there. Him saying, yes, Mom, okay, I'll do all that. It doesn't start there at 19. It starts at 9. It starts at 3. It starts where you say, okay, I would love to do this for you. I would love to do this school project for you. I would love to clean your room for you. I sent my son to the dentist the other day for his first big boy appointment without Mom. And it was just here's your insurance card. I wanted to go. I knew it's so freaking confusing, isn't it? Even when you know what you're doing is confusing at the doctor's office. Why do they hand you 20 forms every single time you walk in the door and you're giving them the same information over and over again? It's a ridiculous, convoluted process. So I knew I wanted to go with him so badly. And he asked me, Mom, are you coming with me? Because the idea of him going to a medical professional without me is that's a completely foreign idea. And I was like, no, no, you got to go. You're going to have a copay. They're going to give you forms to fill out. If you have big questions, call me. But no, this is and I did. I felt bad. I wanted to go and do it. But if we do those things for our kids, we're denying them the opportunity to be okay someday without us. So if your 3-year-old, if you're watching him struggle with, I don't know, getting a block in his little puzzle or whatever it is, your first instinct is going to be to rush in to help, but your second instinct needs to be to stop and watch him figure it out himself. And it's going to be that all along the way. But I promise if you're consistent, you're going to end up with a young person that you can feel good about and confident about and not have to worry yourself sick because you think they can't take care of themselves. And there's a lot of y'all out there who are raising kids who will never be okay without you. And you need to stop because if God is good to you, you will not outlive those kids. So give them the gift of making them okay when you eventually have to leave them. So, all right. Well, that's a weird little sidebar. Hey, famous Davis sidebar. Did you miss those? You can't miss them because they never stop. Okay. God is so good. He gives you what you need. And then my prayer as a parent has always been, God, fill in the gaps. Because I know there's so many. Fill in the gaps. And when I can't be there to whoop my kid's butt, fill in those gaps, Lord. And when I can't be there to hold him, fill in those gaps. And when I can't be there to help him make a good decision, fill in those gaps. All right, let's move on. Feeling a little weepy here, my baby. Okay. Georgia voter law is our subject today, as I promised almost 2 weeks ago. I was going to get you 6 episodes this month, and then the month just poof, slid by. So now we're jamming them in here at the end of the month. But you'll recall I told you last episode that I was going to do Georgia voter law. And last episode was me explaining to liberal listeners why they maybe don't need to feel so bad about their Republican friends and family. It was called Why Are Republicans So, quote, racist? I'd like to thank my producer for putting the quotes in there. He was like, this is a provocative headline. I'm like, yeah, well, the point is I want people to click on it. But he was like, yeah, well, we don't want to drive away we don't want to drive away half your audience. So thank you for the quotes there, Darvio. I appreciate it. But I got a lot of great responses to that one. There were a lot of people who were saying, I've wanted to say something like this to my liberal friends and family. I've wanted to tell them, like, it's not a thing of good versus evil. Like, I just have these different opinions and that's all it is. It's not far-right extremism or the KKK or, whatever. It's not. And I just didn't know how to say it. And so you gave me some of the tools to express myself in that way. I haven't had any comments from liberal listeners. I don't get a lot of comments from liberal listeners, but I know you're out there. And so if you even want to hit me up anonymously just to say, like, maybe that you got something out of it, or maybe that you didn't, I would love that. I would love to know how it hits your ears. My address is JLTY@protonmail.com, JLTY@protonmail.com. But I said last week, we're going to break down Georgia voter law because there's been a lot of rhetoric surrounding it, which I think is very unfair and very unhealthy. And we need to stop doing this. Folks, all of y'all, conservatives, liberals, we need to stop doing this thing where we label everything we don't like as evil. I was thinking today when I was driving in my car, I used to be a liberal, and I've told that story before. Maybe I'll do like a whole show one day. Like you guys have gotten pieces of it, and I've said pieces of it, but I've never put it together in like one big story, one big journey of how it came about. Maybe I'll tell y'all how I became a conservative after a lifetime of being a liberal. But I was driving in my car and I was thinking about, I was listening to a popular conservative pundit, and he was saying, liberals they don't embrace logic. They're basically idiots. They're basically morons. And I was thinking, gosh, when I was a liberal, I didn't think these things because I was evil or because I loved big government, or I didn't think that abortion was at least something that should at least be legal because I wanted more babies to be killed. I wasn't a liberal because I was embracing evil. If you had talked to me at that time, I would have told you, like, no, these ideas make perfect sense to me. This is what is better for people. This is what is better for society at large. I feel this way because I am a good person. And conservatives believe me, have a tendency to villainize and demonize the left, just as the left most certainly does it for the right. And so I want everyone to know that this message is for everybody. We don't have to demonize each other. It's really important that we still see each other as people, not ideas. Because there's a lot of liberals, conservatives, there's a lot of liberals out there who hold ideas that are, to us, feel absolutely ridiculous and, in fact, dangerous. But to them, that's not what they're thinking. They're not looking at you and going, rubbing their hands together and going, all the liberals are going to take over the world and, set it on fire, and we're going to kill all the babies and then slice puppies up. And no, they're mostly just regular people trying to figure out the best way to make this world the best world. Please just try to remember that the person standing in front of you is a human being. And if you're talking to somebody online, they're still a human being. This is Kira talking to herself, because I have been getting very saucy online lately. And that's because I'm not going to church. I like to take it to church here, but I haven't been to church here in California in a minute. And hopefully I'm going to be heading back here next weekend. When I fail to go to church, I can see it and hear it in how I react on social media and the things I say. I usually start cussing a lot more. And so I haven't been the most sensitive person either. So please rest assured, assured that this is me talking to myself as well. And so I promised I would break down the Georgia voter law. And I was trying to think of the best way to do this. The bill is 98 pages. I had kind of said I would go through some of the points with you, but 98 pages is a lot. It's going to be too much for this podcast. I've already used up a lot of my recording time with personal anecdotes that's probably not that interesting. So I was kind of looking online to get like, okay, what's a point by point analysis? And 98 pages. I mean, I skimmed the 98 pages. It's a lot of legalese. I don't know how many bills you read, like political bills. It's a lot of legalese. A lot of times these bills, they just like repeat. It's just like, what do you call it? Like boilerplate language that you just stick in there, and then you just kind of fill in the blanks with the specified language. So once you've read enough of these, you can skip over a lot of parts, because just like in pursuant to code XYZ, and according to the law of XY, I mean, it's a lot of that. It's 98 pages, but probably like 60 of those pages is just extraneous legal language. And so I was like, well, what do I do? How do I break this down? You can go read it. But I think you will get the gist of the bill by just going to find like bullet points or talking points. And I didn't want just preaching to the choir kind of talking points, basically just me reading someone else's talking points that I agree with. The law, as you know, is being framed as by the President of the United States as Jim Crow on steroids, which my grandparents are rolling over in their graves right now to hear that. I mean, that is just anybody who would embrace that language, even as we live in the most prosperous iteration of America for Black people ever. It's shocking. I mean, it's like a shocking lack of intellectual assessment or curiosity. This is absolutely not a new Jim Crow. But I didn't want to just go read some right-wing talking points on this, because the way you look at this bill, a lot of us are looking at it how the media is framing it. So I went to find a left-wing person who was against this bill, and I was hoping I could find someone who had delineated it into bullet points. And I did. And I think she makes she did an excellent job. She is angry about the bill, so she's definitely not on like my side of the ideological aisle. And she was very clear and concise and articulate. She did it in her Twitter thread. Her name is, have to put on my glasses now, y'all. If any like LASIK organization wants to support this show, reach out to me, JLTY at protonmail.com, JLTY at protonmail.com. The degrading of my eyesight has been the most difficult thing, I think, for me to deal with so far in aging. This woman's name is Isosa Osa. Isosa_Osa. She's research and policy director of Fair Fight Action. She says, her Twitter bio says she's forever #Team Abrams. She's from Ohio. And her website is fairfight.com. And I think it's like voting rights stuff, which is cool. So she did a little thread on the Georgia voter law. It was really good, you guys. I mean, it was like from an angle that I most certainly don't agree with. And she's laid out a bunch of points. I don't think I'll get to them all. I'm going to try to pick out the most egregious ones, the ones that people are really pointing out in the media as, you know, this is terrible or whatever, and talk about those. But if you want to go find this thread, she's at Isosa_Osa. And she lays it out really, really well. So thank you, Isosa, for taking the time to read this bill and underscore some of the points that were really important to you. And now I'm going to read some of the points of your thread and respond to them. And here's another thing that Isosa did. She went through it line by line, and she cited every line that she was talking about. So she wasn't just making talking points, folks. She went and she backed up everything. Now, again, this is why it's so important to be able to critically think through your problems, because even though she's quoting actual lines from the bill, at the end of the day, it's all about how you decide to frame it in your mind, right? So I guess part of what we do here on JLTY is like ask people to try to reframe things. Try to reframe in your mind. If you or put a different filter on. If you put a filter on, we did this with Trump, right? There's a lot of liberals who are like, oh my God, did you hear that Trump said inject yourself with bleach? If you've got a filter on Trump that is Trump's a moron, Trump is a fraud, Trump is a racist, Trump is nearly illiterate, Trump is a hateful, evil person, then that comment about you injecting bleach to get rid of COVID is like something that a moron would say, right? And oh my God, this person is evil. We need to get him out of the office. He actually suggested people inject themselves with bleach. You take that comment extremely seriously. If you look at Trump, if your filter for Trump is this guy is a TV star, he's been doing entertainment for years, he is a jokester, I watch him on every campaign trail, he's always making fun of how the media takes his benign comments and makes them into evil things when he's just joking, then that comment looks like a joke. It looks like him making fun of the media, who would take a joke like that and make it serious, right? Your filter changes how you look at facts. Same statement, I'm going to inject yourself with bleach. Same statement, two different filters. We all need to work on reframing if we want to keep everything from fracturing irrevocably. We all need to be able to have the skill to reframe an argument from time to time, reframe something that we see. So Isosa and I, we have two different frameworks here working from the same text, which I think will also make this exercise interesting as well. Okay, let's see. So again, thank you, Isosa, for this work. She starts out, she called the thread 50 reasons why Georgia's new voting law really is that bad. I'm not going to go through all 50, but we'll get to some of the most interesting ones. She says hyper-criminalization. Georgia's new law codifies mass disenfranchisement and further expands criminalization policy in the voting process. Oh my gosh, that sounds crazy. That sounds scary. Like making voting criminal? That sounds scary. Well, let's see what she means. She's got point number 1 here, mass challenges. These are on lines 575 and 576. Codifies that a single person can challenge the voter registration of an unlimited number of voters all at once, resulting in that voter being purged. Let's go to the numbers. So she's referring to a section in section 15. It says any elector of a county or municipality may challenge the qualifications of any person applying to register to vote in the county or municipality and may challenge the qualifications of any elector of the county or municipality whose name appears on the list of electors. Such challenges shall be in writing and shall specify distinctly the grounds of the challenge. There shall not be a limit on the number of persons whose qualifications such elector may challenge. And that's the part she's concerned about. She frames that as a criminalization or intimidation. And I don't see anything wrong with it. Basically, this is saying that if you notice that somebody might be cheating in their vote, you can challenge their vote. Now, you got to do it in writing. There's a process. She makes it sound in her summary like, oh, anybody can just walk up to you in line and be like, I don't believe I don't believe you're a real voter. Get out of line. Like she makes it sound like that is what the process is. But what I just read to you, if you could sift through that legalese, no, the person has to issue the challenge in writing and has to give a specific reason. Like, oh, I saw this person at another place voting earlier today, or I saw this person pull out a fake ID to vote. I don't see anything wrong with that. Like if voting is a very serious process, and there's a lot of laws surrounding privacy in voting, right? And to protect it. One of the things you can't do, Justin Timberlake got in trouble for this, I think in 2016. He took a picture of himself in the voting booth. Innocent. Why wouldn't you? Of course, you're in the voting booth. It's cool. I'm doing the democracy thing, casting my vote. Here's a picture for the fans. Well, he got investigated by the Tennessee, I think it was the Voting Rights Commission or Election Commission or whatever commission oversees those things, because it's illegal to take a picture of yourself in a voting booth. So there's a lot of kind of weird, very privacy issues surrounding voting because we take it very seriously. So why isn't it okay for someone to say, like, we do that with terrorism, right? Some of y'all might be too young to remember the days after 9/11. For years afterwards, there was a huge campaign, see something, say something. The way that you see stupid mask commercials on TV now, wear a mask to show people you care, wear a mask. That's how it was like see something, say something was after 9/11. It was everywhere, every commercial, there were PSAs everywhere. You see something, you say something. This is the same thing. See something, say something. And you don't it's not just you being able to walk up to somebody in line and going, you know what? I don't think you are a legitimate voter. Get out of line. There's a process. And so I don't find that to be problematic. You might not agree with a citizen being able to rat out another citizen on whether or not they're voting correctly if they see irregularities, but number 2, she has on the same issue of mass challenges. It codifies that a single person can challenge the rights of an unlimited number of voters to cast their ballot in an upcoming election. And then she quotes this number: 364,000 Georgians were frivolously challenged in the runoffs. Lines 622 to 623. Let's see. The paragraph says any elector of the county or municipality may challenge the right of any other elector of the county or municipality whose name appears on the list of electors to vote in an election. So there's that boilerplate language, right, that I read in the last paragraph. Such challenges may be made at any time prior to the elector whose right to vote is being challenged voting at the elector's polling place, or if such an elector casts an absentee ballot prior to 5 p.m. on the day before the absentee ballots are to begin to be scanned and tabulated. So basically, this person can challenge a group of voters up until the day of the elections or the day that the ballots are tabulated if you vote absentee. And this is the line she takes umbrage to. There shall not be a limit on the number of persons whose qualifications such elector may challenge. I don't understand this one, why she feels a mass challenge like this is like a bad idea, because it's just the same thing as we talked about before, where if you see somebody and you witness them pull out a fake ID to vote, you can challenge that vote. You can write a complaint, basically. Not sure what good that'll do, but you can write a complaint, basically. And it's the same thing. So if the Republican candidate X notices that he's got his team working and he knows that there's 10,000 dead voters on the voter rolls of Georgia, then he can apply to have those names purged before the ballots are counted. I don't understand what the problem with that is. She seems to be, I think the idea here that she's upset about is that one person could have enough power to challenge multiple votes. I think that's the framework she's looking at it through, which is like, yeah, okay, even if that were what's going on here, which I don't think is what's going on, the power of the individual is, the left wing loves that. Right? We have spent a whole year in lockdowns for a disease that kills mainly elderly people and people who are obese with comorbidities like diabetes. We spent a whole year in lockdown because of if just one person dies. If just one person. So we do that all the time. My left-wing friends love that. Well, if just one person it deems themselves transgender in a high school, then we really do have to change the rules for the whole high school, for the whole county, for the whole district. So what is the difference between that one person being important enough to challenge the system and this one person in a voting process being important enough to challenge the system? The point is that both are individuals. And if they have complaints that affect a group of people, you're allowed to do that. We do that everywhere else. In fact, I guess being in a representative republic, that is basically our system of government. So no, that's not a strange thing that one person would be able, particularly if you're talking about that one person being a candidate, being able to say before the votes are counted, before you get into all that trouble, hey, by the way, County Election Commission, I'm challenging these 10,000 votes. I think these are dead people. I don't want to see them come across the voter rolls on Election Day. Can you verify that these people are? I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't find it to be disenfranchisement at all. It doesn't seem like even a bad idea. It seems like a good idea. Like a Democrat could use that. Like, what about a Democrat running in a Republican district? And you're like, you know what? This guy has been playing shady politics forever. He knows that that nursing home down the street, that most of the people he went to register to vote 2 years ago are not there anymore. And if those people's names show up on the voter rolls, I'm going to be suspicious. So I want to challenge this ahead of time. I want to make sure that the County Election Commission has verified all of the alive voters in Podunk Nursing Home, so that my opponent, can't keep doing this, going in, culling new voters and leaving knowing that they may pass away in a year or two and they'll never get struck from the rolls. So he's just accumulating votes that don't exist anymore. That works both ways. I don't understand. Unless you think that the Democrats benefit from people not being able to verify signatures, unless you think that Democrat, if you're a Democrat and you believe that Democrats benefit from cheating, like, I don't see why you would oppose this. If there's no cheating, then this isn't a big deal.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
Number 3 under her mass challenges section mandates that counties hold mass challenge hearings that the challenged voter must show up to within 10 days of frivolous challenge. Frivolous is her word. That's not in the language at all. The language is upon the elector making the challenge within 10 business days following the filing of the challenge. Yeah, I mean, you got to show up in court to challenge a ticket. Why wouldn't you have to show up in court to contest your, like, if the whole point of asking the state to verify a voter, right? If the whole point is to make sure that dead people aren't voting or illegals aren't voting or whatever, if that's the whole point, then if that person doesn't show up, then doesn't that kind of like vindicate, like, yeah, they're probably not here because they're dead. Again, there's nothing crazy about that. Maybe you don't agree. Again, like going back to last week's episode, maybe you don't agree, but you can't look at that and say, oh, this is racist. This is the new Jim Crow. It's literally no different than what we do in any other sector of society. Here's another one that a lot of people who are framing this as a new Jim Crow keep complaining about. It criminalizes line warming. I did not know what line warming was, but Isosa frames it as, it makes it a crime for volunteers or groups to hand out water or snacks to voters in line, and it makes it a crime for voters in line to accept waters or snacks. And she's got these on lines 1873 through 1889, thereabouts. The section is 33, section A, subsection A. No person shall solicit votes in any manner or by any means or method, nor shall any person distribute or display any campaign material, nor shall any person give, offer to give or participate in the giving of money or gifts, including but not limited to food and drink to an elector, nor shall any person solicit signatures for any petition, nor shall any person other than election officials discharging their duties establish or set up any tables or booths on the day in which ballots are being cast. When you read the whole thing like that, it's like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Because look, this is what happens. And this is the guy's honest truth. I swear, from my time in Gary, Indiana, this is how it was going every time to go in to cast your ballot. Every damn time. There's folks there who are, because Gary is 87% black or whatever. It's like basically 87% Democrat voters. People don't even think that when you're walking into your local polling place that you're going to vote a different way. And so even the election officials, like the people who are there to monitor, the people who are the volunteer, like the poll watchers or who are volunteering at the polls, even they don't think anything of it. And they'll pass you a water bottle with a picture of Obama on it. You know, that is influence. That is solicitation. It's a form of solicitation. I can remember when the first our polling place was right directly across the street, like 5 feet across the street from my house in Gary, Indiana. It was the school. And so I walked over there one day during the Obama's first primaries when he was getting primaried by Hillary. And to walk inside just for the primary vote, there were people who were like passing out Obama literature at the door, or they will set up a table of waters and it's like a hot day. Sure. Like have a water. Oh, by the way, this water is brought to you by Gary for Obama or whatever. Those are solicitation tactics. It doesn't matter. It's just a bottle of water to you. It's just a stick of gum to you. But the government doesn't view it as that. The government says that when you give these things out in an official capacity, these are technically campaign materials. You can't campaign at the polls. That's why you can't wear your campaign shirt in the polls. You can't wear your MAGA shirt to the polls. You're not supposed to wear your Hillary Clinton shirt or whatever politician is running, your Kamala Harris shirt. You're not supposed to wear those to the polls. So this is not the way that the way that your cable news is framing this is like, oh my gosh, look how terrible Republicans are. They don't even want to let people have water to drink while they stand in the hot lines in Atlanta. It gets freaking hot. Sometimes they have those late fall summers, where the heat just becomes oppressive. They want people to be uncomfortable. No, you read the whole paragraph. You heard me read the whole paragraph, right? The whole paragraph refers to campaigning materials, which may include food and water. See, the people on the news took out the food and water part, and they're like, see? No. What they're saying is you can't be passing out campaign materials. You can't do anything to influence a person's vote, even by relieving their discomfort in the name of your candidate as they wait in line. You can't do that. You can't do that in any other state. Georgia's is clarifying it here. Like you cannot campaign at the polls, and these are all considered campaigning tactics. So it's not racism. It's protecting the polls. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't go and look at the whole text of that paragraph, right? I don't know. I'm assuming Isosa did too, and yet that's the conclusion she came to. The thing that's interesting to me that might be sort of reframing this in her mind in a different way from me is that if you go to the link for the bill that takes you right to the Georgia legislature's online posting of this bill, the bill has some of this language underlined, and that I'm wondering if Isosa actually, I do not mean to be insulting Isosa. I don't. I wonder if she read the paragraphs leading up to or after the underlying language, because she's like highlighting some of this underlying language, like that water and food, that's underlined, but the rest of the paragraph isn't. So maybe she's just looking at the underlying part and then inferring, because when you read that full paragraph, it's like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. It at least doesn't sound that crazy. So it's not about letting people starve or go thirsty in a line. By the way, y'all, what are we doing? What are we doing these days when we are telling people, oh my gosh, if there's not someone there to give you a bottle of water, then that's poll suppression, that's voter suppression. Bring your own damn water. You can get water anywhere. You can get water anywhere in the United States of America. We have freaking cities in the desert. You ever gone to Las Vegas? I love going to Las Vegas. It is the epitome of the American dream in all of its glory, right? In its sinfulness, in its decadence, in its perseverance for survival, like everything, innovation, everything. Vegas to me is America, like in all of its horrifying glory. And you drive through the desert and you're driving in the middle of nowhere. Like when you come up from LA, you drive and you're just dark desert and it's just nothing all around you, which is ridiculous that it's only a 2-lane highway for most of the way. There's nothing around. Build it bigger. And then you just start to see the city of lights like kind of rise up from the horizon. And when you pull up on it, you go from being in the starkest, like Mars, those images you see of Mars, it's like that, just barren and desolate and like sci-fi in nature, just so crazy. And you pull up on this city and it is booming. It is lights and it's water fountains and they have a freaking like Venice Canal ride. It's the most incredible thing you've ever seen, and it's the middle of the desert where there should be no water. Folks, you can get water wherever the hell you need it in this country, particularly if you're standing in an urban center waiting to vote. If you got to the voting line, you can get water. You can literally get water for free. Just find a tap somewhere, open it. It might not be the most hygienic, but open it and drink. Water runs out of taps here in the United States. So I do not understand this argument, except that it's grasping at straws, trying to prove how Republicans are so cruel that they want to make waiting in line uncomfortable for you. And by the way, even if waiting in line to vote is... First of all, it's sad if you think that's the most uncomfortable thing that you can do in your life. I mean, you need to be doing more uncomfortable things then. But if waiting in line to vote is the most uncomfortable thing that you can think of, so why does waiting in line to vote have to be a pleasant experience? Why does anything about voting have to be pleasant and comfortable? The idea of a freedom to vote does not mean that you need to just take away every obstacle. I got to come to your house and tie your shoes because maybe you can't bend over to get your shoes on so you can get out the door to the polling place. Like, that's where we're going with all this. You know, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so the light, it's hot when you stand outside. Okay. People do all kinds of things to exercise their rights and privileges. My movie that I wrote here about Harriet Tubman, Minty, which you can go find on YouTube. It's called Minty. Look up Minty, the Harriet Tubman movie, because Minty sounds like a toothpaste, but that's actually her real name. And there's a line in there that she has that I wrote for her. And the line is, there's no comfort in freedom. We've had it so good that we've come to this position in our lives where we feel like freedom's supposed to be comfortable and it's supposed to come easy. And no, because nothing worth having, nothing that is good, nothing that is right comes easy. And you wouldn't want it to, or else it wouldn't be good. Yeah, I don't know enough about that. You want to hear? Yeah. All right, let's go. Oh, man. Okay, here's another section that she uses. I'm wondering if I'm going to have to break this up into two. I think I'm going to have to. Because there's a lot, and I'm not even I don't even want to read all of this to you, but there are definitely some good points to be made. So I'll try to start speeding up here a little, and then I think I will do a second episode, which I'll probably just record. I'll just split this one into two. That's what I'll do. All right. Okay. Are you glad that I've now worked out the scheduling of Just Listen to Yourself for this week on air? Welcome to the mind of Kira Davis. All right, criminalization is where she goes next. She's really upset about criminalization. It creates, this is what she says, this bill creates a new misdemeanor for voters if the voter allows someone other than those authorized under state or federal, see, I'm going to have to do 2 episodes because I'm already getting tired, state or federal law to see them marking their ballot at home. And it also creates a new felony for anyone that witnesses someone else mark their absentee ballot at home unless they are providing legally authorized assistance. And it creates a misdemeanor for the handling a completed application for anyone not authorized by law to assist the voter. And it creates a misdemeanor for photographing your own absentee ballot or someone else's. Okay, so basically what she's complaining about is that now it's making criminal the handling someone else's ballot, basically. So she's got a bunch of different lines. I'm going to grab one. I'll grab because these are all in different sections. Let's do the first one. This creates a new misdemeanor for voters if the voter allows someone other than those authorized under state or federal law to see them marking their ballot at home. And that's in line 1339 and 1347 through 1349. So, do you want me to read all this? It's basically it's reading a statement that you are signing as somebody who is turning in your ballot. Either you're doing a mail-in ballot or an absentee ballot. And here is the language. 1347 through 1349. Basically, it's just saying, hey, this language needs to be on the bill. I, the undersigned, do swear, needs to be on the vote, excuse me. I, the undersigned, do swear or affirm under penalty of false swearing that I am a citizen of the United States and the state of Georgia, that I possess the qualifications of an elector required by the laws of the state of Georgia, that I am entitled to vote in the precinct containing my residence in the primary or election in which the ballot is to be cast, that I am eligible to vote by absentee ballot, that I have not marked or mailed any other absentee ballots, nor will I mark or mail another absentee ballot for voting in such primary or elections, nor shall I vote therein in person, and that I have read and understand the instructions accompanying this ballot, and that I have carefully complied with such instructions in completing this ballot, that I have marked and sealed this ballot in private and have not allowed any authorized person to observe the voting, blah, 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 blah. What is wrong with that? The way that Isosa has it laid out here is like, oh my gosh, somebody can make you a criminal by ratting on you. Just by ratting. It makes it sound like we're just creating this class of snitches. When I read that paragraph to you, and that's the paragraph that they're going to include in your absentee ballot packet, and it's part of your signature. When you sign the ballot, you're going to have to sign that agreement that you have not done any of these things. You haven't shown your ballot to anybody else, that no one has assisted it with you, that you were the one that dropped it off. You know, my husband wanted me to drop off his mail-in ballot in the prior election here. During the pandemic, and I was going in the morning, and he was like, oh, here's mine, can you take mine? And I was like, no, I can't, that's illegal. And he was like, who cares? What difference does it make? Like, you know it's mine, I know it's mine, we're not doing anything wrong. And of course, it would have been so easy, who would have known? But it is against the law that his ballot is his. He must be in control. That's all this language is saying, is that your ballot belongs to you. So while she's framing this as, oh my gosh, anybody could snitch on you and then make you a felon for just handing in a vote. No, what it is you've signed a legal document, and it's like perjury. And so if you do go to vote physically, even after you hand in your mail-in ballot, it's the equivalent of perjury, right? You're doing something you've agreed not to do, and by law. I genuinely do not see the racism angle in this or voter suppression in this at all. In fact, to me, it would seem like, yeah, that makes sense. If you're going to exercise the privilege of mailing in a ballot or voting absentee, then you need to be extra vigilant about the chain of custody of that vote. So she and other people in your favorite cable news media frame this as criminalizing voting. Here is a perfect example of why this show is called Just Listen to Yourself, and why I always tell you that this show is about drawing talking points out to their logical conclusion. You hear the term criminalizing voting, and it freaks you the freak out. Oh my gosh, they're going to make it, these folks are actually going to make it illegal for black people to go to the polls. Can you believe this? In 2021, they are going to criminalize being black and voting. That's the hysterics of this. And if you just take 5 seconds to draw that, A, to go read the language, but B, to draw that thought out to its logical conclusion. What does it mean to criminalize someone's vote? No, really, what does it mean? I honestly want you to think about that. What does it mean to criminalize someone's vote? That would mean to make it against the law, which you're making some, that's against the law. That's against the Constitution. How can it be criminalizing someone's vote just to ask them to sign a piece of paper that says no one else influenced this vote? No one else signed this paper. That's my signature. I put it in the box. I was the one in control of this vote from beginning to end. How is that criminalizing voting? It's criminalizing false voting, right? It's criminalizing perjury, not voting.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
All right, here's one. She labels as intimidation. This is an intimidation process. This part of the bill creates a new fraud hotline that will accept, quote, anonymous tips, and the AG can launch investigations or prosecute within 3 days. This is on lines 171 through 178. Let's check it out. Here's what it says. The Attorney General shall have the authority to establish and maintain a telephone hotline for the use of electors of the state to file complaints and allegations of voter intimidation and illegal election activities. Oh, let's look at that. This is really interesting. Once again, folks, things change when you go read the language instead of reading someone else's filter. Because this is how Isosa explains this. She labels it intimidation, and then she says this will create a new fraud hotline that will accept anonymous tips, and the AG can launch investigations or prosecute within 3 days. When I read you that sentence, what comes to your mind? What fear comes to your mind? Well, oh my gosh, the AG can start intimidating voters. This fraud hotline creates an ability for the AG to intimidate voters. And that language is in the bill, intimidation. But isn't it funny, when you go to the bill, the language isn't regarding the intimidation by the AG of voters. The language is in regard to politicians and politics intimidating voters. The Attorney General shall have the authority to establish and maintain a telephone hotline for the use of electors of the state to file complaints and allegations of voter intimidation. So if they feel that they're being intimidated, they can call the AG and have the AG investigated. It's not the AG who's intimidating people. That's the language is right there. But your cable news reframed this for you and thought that you weren't going to ask another question about it, and they were probably right for too many people. Oh my gosh, now the AG, this codifies intimidation by the AG. The AG can basically go and threaten people. No, that it's the opposite. This little line in this bill is about establishing a line for voters to call the AG to say, hey, I'm being intimidated here. Someone is coming to my business and telling me that I'm going to lose business unless I put this sign in my window. or unless I publicly support XY candidate or whatever. I won't read you the rest of the paragraph. It's not that important, but the AG will have the authority to investigate accusations of intimidation. I mean, isn't it incredible? Isn't it incredible when you take the time to actually parse out what you're reading, to actually go after the information you're seeing, how it can be so incredibly different from how it is framed based on who is doing the framing. And by the way, folks, my job as an opinion journalist, which is different from a journalist, my job as an opinion journalist is often to frame things. And this might be Sosa's job. I don't know. She seems like she's an activist, but maybe she's more somebody who's like me, whose job is to help along the conversation by reframing and simplifying for people. I do it all the time in my work. So I'm not trying to be a hypocrite here. Like, I get it. I get that it serves a purpose, because the fact is we depend on a lot of people being incurious. But that's why I do this podcast. I don't have the time to hit all sides when I'm right. I got 800 words to write an opinion on. No, I want you to know where I'm coming. So I'm going to use So I'm going to use the buzzwords that I know are going to hit you right. I'm going to use the headline that's going to get you to click. And instead of going through line by line and quoting everything, I'm going to frame it for you. And if you trust me, then that's not a problem. But if you don't trust me, then maybe you're getting lies. You don't know unless you do the research yourself. I would like to think that you can trust me to be reasonable, but I don't think that you should depend on that. I don't. And again, I don't think you should have to read everything that comes across the wire, every single thing, every single bill. Like, who has time for all that? But there might be some issues that get you inflamed or passionate. I would suggest making it a point on those issues, to go find the bill, to go find the legislation, to catch both sides, to read to the bottom of the article, which is where we usually jam in relevant facts. But if you want to know what the story is about, read the first line and the last line. All right, I'm going to get to this other section but again, Sosa, such an amazing job of organizing this and parsing this out. I don't know that this is work I would have done myself as a freelance opinion journalist, just because who has the time? But she's got a section here called Power Grab. Here are the power grab provisions of this bill. # power grab. And there's some real, quote, scary stuff in here. New Jim Crow. For her 11th point, she says that one of the problems is that this removes SOS power, that's Secretary of State. It removes the Secretary of State as chair of the state election board, and that's on line 185. Here's the language. There is created a state board to be known as the State Election Board, to be composed of a chairperson elected by the General Assembly, an elector to be elected by a majority vote of the Senate of the General Assembly, and like a couple of other General Assembly appointed people. Number 12, she says this grants state legislature power to appoint a new chair of the state election board, meaning the state legislature will choose 3 out of 5 state election board members going forward, a majority, and it removes the state of Secretary of State power as a voting member of the state election board. The bill was amended at the last second to remove Secretary of State power to appoint members of a performance review board. It removes SOS power to provide all the necessary support and assistance to the election board for county takeovers at the sole discretion of the election board. It basically removes the power of the Secretary of State over elections. It bans SOS/counties from proactively sending out vote by mail applications without a request. So you can't solicit people to register to vote. This has always been a big issue in this country, like motor voter registration. And I like the fact that I can register at the DMV, like while I'm getting my other BS done. I like that. But the whole reason why a lot of people are against motor voter registration is that it creates a lot of new registered voters who have no intention to vote. And then there's no one there to guard their vote. They're not paying attention to their vote. That's just a bunch of people who are in the system, and their accounts or their identities or their votes are ripe for corruption because no one's monitoring them. The people have no intention of voting. They're just not the type that's going to go and vote, or they don't want to, or they, whatever. There are all kinds of reasons why people don't vote. Here in California, I know there's a lot of people like, get out of California. There's like 2 million conservative voters that just never cast a vote here in California. They're just so over it. Like if all 2 million people of those people voted, this recall election would be over before it even began. All right. So I read you that one line. Let's see. I'll grab another line. 252 and 253 removes SOS as the voting member of the state election board. Secretary of State shall be an ex officio non-voting member of the board. 3 voting members of the board shall constitute a quorum, and no vacancy on the board shall impair the right of the quorum to exercise all the powers and perform all the duties of the board. Okay. She's framing this as a power grab, but it's the opposite. The power grab is one unelected person having control over how elections are run in the state. But elections are it's a process of the citizens, of the voting individual. And what is the greatest minority in the United States? The individual. And that's why we have a representative republic. So that's why we elect our officials. Our officials represent us. So when one unelected person, Secretary of State, is appointed by the governor, it's not an elected position. The Secretary of State is an appointed position, and the governor is an interested body, right? He has an agenda. She has an agenda. He or she wants to be reelected in the coming elections, or they want their person behind them elected when they retire. It is a definite conflict of interest to have that person appointing the Secretary of State, don't you think, liberals? Honestly. Let's pick your most hated Republican governor, which at this point has got to be Rick DeSantis in mainstream thought. All right, let's say, if Ron DeSantis, I keep calling him Rick DeSantis. It's Ron, isn't it? It's Ron. Because the last guy was Rick Scott, I think. All right, I'm sorry, Governor DeSantis. I'm so sorry, but you get it. If Ron DeSantis is on the bubble for the next election in Florida, let's just say he's not as massively popular as he is in that state. If he's on the bubble for the next election, Democrat voters in Florida, do you want him to be able to appoint the Secretary of State, the person who runs the elections, who is responsible for the vote counting, do you want him to appoint that person, a very coveted position? That's a huge conflict of interest. It should never have been this way in the first place. It blows my mind. Maybe that's a blessing of all of this, is that we're seeing how backwards the tiny machinations of our voting system is. No, of course the governor should not appoint the Secretary of State, or I should say, I don't think the Secretary of State should be appointed. No, but that's the way it is right now. But if that's an appointed position, then of course that person should not be overseeing the apparatus which could oust the person that appointed them. That's putting way too much faith in people in government. Way too much faith.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
The Secretary of State is an unelected position. They absolutely should not have decisive power over controversial election issues. That should be for the people to decide. And how do the people decide these things? We elect our representatives, and they argue things out on our behalf, and they vote on these things on our behalf, and they investigate on our behalf. So what she's complaining about is all of this power, this consolidated power in determining the election integrity process. Instead of it being housed in one single self-interested person who certainly has political interests, instead of being housed in that one person, now that power gets spread among 3 or 4 or 5. That's not a power grab. That's a relinquishing of power. Again, framing. Isn't it amazing? You just reframe. I think that's a deliberately dishonest and disingenuous interpretation of it. But of course, your media is going to grab on it. It's a power grab. The Georgia legislature, because they don't like that the Georgia legislature is Republican. But if you don't like that, here's the thing. This is the thing. If you don't like the Republican Secretary of State, you can't do bupkis about it. You don't elect that person. The governor appoints that person. You don't have one damn say in the Secretary of State. If you don't like the election board in Georgia, then you get your ass to the polls and you vote out Republicans so that there are Democrats in those positions moving forward. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have your say in that process. That is not stripping. That's not a power grab. It just amazes me that I think it's a problem, and I think my liberal listeners will probably agree with me on this one. I think it's an amazingly dangerous thing to think that it is helpful to consolidate power in the hands of one person rather than to spread it out among many. If the idea is that the people cannot be responsible to decide these things, maybe you need to think about how you look at people and a representative republic and your right to be represented as an individual. So this is a gross misframing of this. I'm not even going to say it's an innocuous law. I think this is actually a game changer, which is probably why a lot of people don't like it. This power should not be this should be federal. This power should not be in the hands of one unelected person who is beholden to the person in office who appointed them. Opposite of a power grab. She says this also increases legislative power, and this allows the state legislature to overrule any emergency election rule. And this is in lines 2491. It's 2491 through 2494. Let's take a look. Any emergency rule adopted by the state election board pursuant to the provisions of this subsection may be suspended upon the majority vote of the House of Representatives or Senate committees on judiciary within 10 days of receipt by committees. Again, this is another thing. This is not a power grab. It's the opposite. If you see a state or any official taking the power out of the hands of one single person and giving it to the legislature is you. The legislature is you. So they're giving back the power to you. This is what happens when you look at your government as a top-down process, which is a perverted view of the American Republic. That's not how we're set up. We don't teach this in schools, folks. We need to get back to teaching this in schools so people understand this. They have this idea that it's the people in the legislature that are authoritarian. It's the single person that's the authoritarian. If a single person has the right, this is another thing about Ron DeSantis that a lot of people have found so attractive in how he's dealt with COVID. Right? It's not that he has said it's not real, it's not dangerous for certain people. He's got the biggest elderly population in the country, I do believe. And yet the mortality rates in his state are lower than the national average. But his thing all along has been, this is not my power to have. It is not my power to tell businesses that they have to stay closed indefinitely or to tell schools how they should reopen in different counties where the numbers might be different. In some counties, there might be no COVID cases. You know, it's not my job to tell the travel industry when they can start traveling or tell people when they can come in and out of Florida. That is not my job. It's not my power. I wasn't elected for that. You elect a legislative body to make those decisions for you. I'm the executive branch. But this is the result of a perverted worldview on the Republic of the United States. The idea that government is top down. No, it's bottom up. The legislature is more powerful than the governor, and certainly more powerful than the Secretary of State. This is not a power grab to give the legislature the ability to reject election rules that were brought by one unelected person. Absolutely not. This is, again, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this. Isosa needs to change her framing on this. And again, you know, she's an activist. Maybe she doesn't even want to. Maybe this is deliberate. But this is why it's so important for us to take the time to really think about what these things mean. And you hear somebody say this is a power grab and you stop there? No, ask why. Ask why. If someone tells you that Georgia voting law is a power grab and it's racist, ask why and let them explain. And if they scoff or if they just want to blow you off, then they don't have the answer, or they've never thought about it, or they just heard that on the news and that's what they're repeating. But as we've seen here today, if you take a few minutes to actually dig into it, and this is surface level stuff, you guys. This is, as my colleague Jeff Charles would say, Sesame Street stuff. We're not doing anything that's that intellectually difficult or involved right here. I'm reading a Twitter thread and then checking it against the actual document. You know, it's not rocket surgery that we're performing here. It only takes a little bit of effort to illuminate, to inform yourself. And then it makes it a little easier to realize, okay, while we still may not agree that these are the best rules for elections, you know, maybe you think that some of these things are wrong just on face value, at least there's a way for us to talk about this where we're not accusing each other of the most horrific sins of humankind. I'm going to leave it at there. We're going to make this a two-parter. And in fact, I am actually going to take a break and get right back to recording this so that my producer can release them on the heels of each other. Because I do think that there's a lot more to dig into. Isosa, again, did an incredible job of breaking this down line by line. And I want to challenge some of her descriptions here as we move further into this law. And for that, I definitely think I'm going to need a second episode. So, for those of you who have made it this far, congratulations. I hope this hasn't been too boring. I mean, breaking down a bill, I don't know. It's been on my heart. It needs to be done. So if you have comments, questions, you want to add something to the conversation, email us here at JLTY@protonmail.com, JLTY@protonmail.com. Here's the other thing, the cool thing that's going on. I'm running a song contest for JLTY because I'm going to run up against copyright issues sooner or later. I know. I love my theme song right now. I love it. And I feel like it's perfect for me. And if I had like $1 bajillion, I would just license it and be done with it. But I don't have $1 bajillion, and I'm probably not going to have it anytime soon. So we decided that before we get snagged by the copywriters, let's see what our fan base has to offer, see what creativity is out there. So we're holding a contest. You have the opportunity to write the new theme song for JLTY. I've already had several entries. They're all fantastic. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start playing some of the pieces of these. And I want to encourage you to send in your entries. Send it to JLTY@protonmail.com and have fun with it. You could win $150, but even better than that, which, I mean, $150 is, it's not, you know, writing a song is not easy. So I know, like, you deserve $150,000. Let me just say that. You deserve it. But you're only going to get $150. But the other thing you get is you get to have your song released by The Orchard and Sony Music. The Orchard is a subsidiary of Sony Music. They're partners with Sony Music. So basically you'll get released by Sony Music. I mean, come on. You'll get a cool release. And you'll have your song played on our network, the FCB Radio Network. I mean, for sure. So, I don't know. It seems to me, I don't know the process of writing a song. It seems like it's a lot of work. But it also seems to me if you're just looking for a break, if you're looking to be heard, looking for something to put on a resume, this could be a win-win for both of us. So go ahead and send us something in. I'm also thinking our deadline right now is April 30th, but I think we're probably going to extend that. So if you're worried, if you're hearing the ads running, you're like, oh, I don't know if I have till April 30th, send it in anyways. We're going to extend it. I don't think I actually appreciated how much time it can take to like sit down and formulate something. So I want to give you guys more time. And I think we want to get this taken care of before we run into problems. So we're not having problems right now. I don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, Kira's going to get taken off the air. It's nothing like that. So our first entry that I would like to highlight today, this is our first entry comes from Joseph. I won't say your last name, Joseph, until I have permission from everyone. But this is from Joseph. And I just want to play a little clip as we move out of today's episode. So I'll say goodbye to you with this little clip from Joseph's song, and you can tell us what you think of this. JLTY@protonmail.com. Joseph, thank you so much for sending in this entry. I'm so impressed with your musical ability. I'm jealous of it. And thank you so much for taking the time to think about me and writing a theme song for this show and our audience and their ears. So I will see you guys on the next episode where we will finish up this Georgia voter law thing. And in the meantime, please let us know what you think of this entry from Joseph as we play a piece of it for you guys on the way out. Thank you, Joseph, so much. And talk to you guys later.
The FCB Radio Network. First class broadcasting worldwide.